Dust motes danced in the merciless midday sun, illuminating the rough texture of the desert road. A man lay sprawled beside it, a tattered cloak half covering his form. His head throbbed, a dull, relentless ache that echoed the emptiness in his stomach and the despair in his heart. Hours earlier, he had been full of hope, journeying to a distant market, his purse heavy with savings. Now he was just a broken collection of bones and bruises, his belongings gone, his spirit crushed. He had been ambushed, beaten, left for dead, and the world seemed to have forgotten he existed. Every passing shadow of a cloud offered a fleeting illusion of respite, but the reality was the searing heat, the gritty taste of dirt in his mouth, and the agonizing certainty that he was utterly alone. He heard the distant clip-clop of hooves, a sound that initially stirred a flicker of hope, only for it to be extinguished moments later. A richly dressed merchant astride a fine horse came into view. The man on the ground managed a weak cough, a plea for help. The merchant slowed, his eyes sweeping over the prone figure, perhaps seeing only a nuisance, a potential danger, or simply someone else's problem. Without a word, he spurred his horse forward, leaving a trail of dust and silence in his wake. The traveler closed his eyes, a fresh wave of hopelessness washing over him. Sometime later, another set of footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. This time it sounded like a religious figure, perhaps a priest or a Levite, someone dedicated to spiritual teachings and good deeds. The traveler gathered what little strength he had left and mumbled for aid. The footsteps paused, very close this time. He could almost feel the presence of another human being. For a brief, agonizing moment, he imagined a helping hand, a soothing voice. But then the footsteps resumed, not towards him, but around him, moving swiftly to the opposite side of the road before continuing on their path. The traveler felt a deeper wound open in his chest, a pain far sharper than any physical blow. To be seen, acknowledged, and still ignored, that was a special kind of abandonment. He wanted to scream, but no sound would come. He just lay there, waiting for the inevitable, for the sun to set, for the cold night to come, for his last breath to escape. Then a different sound, not the hurried pace of someone avoiding trouble, nor the indifferent trot of the unconcerned. This was a hesitant, slower approach, the clip-clop of a donkey, perhaps. And then it stopped, right beside him. He braced himself, expecting nothing, perhaps another dismissive glance. But instead, a shadow fell over him. Not the harsh silhouette of indifference, but a gentle presence. A voice, soft and deeply concerned, spoke. "My friend, are you all right? What has happened here?" The voice was rough, unpolished, yet filled with an immediate, undeniable compassion. The traveler opened his eyes slowly, squinting against the light. A figure knelt beside him, a person whose clothes suggested he was a traveler himself, perhaps even from a region often viewed with suspicion. This stranger didn't recoil from the blood, didn't hesitate at the disheveled appearance. His eyes were kind, truly seeing the suffering. Robbed, the traveler rasped. Beaten. The stranger didn't need more. Without a word, he gently shifted the traveler, carefully examining his wounds. He pulled out a flask of water, a precious commodity in that arid land, and held it to the traveler's lips. The cool liquid was like a balm, easing the dryness in his throat. Then the stranger produced oil and wine, not for himself, but for the injured man. He carefully cleaned the gashes, poured the soothing oil over them, and then, with surprising tenderness, bound them with strips of cloth torn from his own garment. Each movement was deliberate, caring, as if the stranger was tending to his own brother. "You are gravely hurt," the stranger said, his voice laced with concern. "I will take you somewhere safe, where you can rest and recover." With immense effort and the stranger's steady support, the traveler was carefully helped onto the back of the stranger's donkey. The journey was slow, each jolt a fresh agony, but the presence of the stranger, walking patiently beside him, his hand occasionally steadying him, brought a surprising sense of peace amidst the pain. They arrived at a small inn, a humble place, as dusk settled. The stranger gently lifted the traveler from the donkey, carrying him inside as if he weighed nothing. He spoke to the innkeeper, his voice firm but kind, explaining the situation. "Please," he said, pulling out a small pouch of coins, "take care of him. Nurse him back to health. Whatever he needs, food, comfort, medicine, please provide it. And if that is not enough, if there are further costs, I will pay them when I return." The innkeeper, accustomed to the harsh realities of the road, looked at the stranger with an expression of quiet awe. He nodded, sensing the depth of the commitment. The traveler, lying on a clean bed, could hardly believe what was happening. He was safe, he was cared for, and it was all thanks to someone he had never met, someone who had every reason to pass him by. Days turned into weeks. The stranger did not return immediately, but the innkeeper faithfully tended to the traveler, funded by the stranger's generosity. Slowly, painstakingly, the traveler's body began to heal. But more profound was the healing of his spirit. The bitterness, the despair that had settled upon him on that lonely road began to dissipate, replaced by a deep well of gratitude and wonder. He had been left for dead by those who should have helped, and saved by a complete stranger, someone from a background often viewed with disdain. This story, though a modern imagining, echoes a timeless parable told by Jesus thousands of years ago, a story about what it truly means to be a neighbor. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 30 to 37, Jesus recounts the tale of a man traveling from Jerusalem to Jericho who falls among thieves. Like our traveler, he is stripped, beaten, and left half dead. A priest passes by, sees him, and moves to the other side. A Levite, a temple assistant, does the same. Both are religious leaders, expected to show compassion, yet they fail. But then, a Samaritan, a member of a group often despised by the Jewish people of that time, comes upon the injured man. He sees the suffering and is moved with compassion. He doesn't just feel sorry, he acts. He binds the man's wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. He puts the man on his own animal, brings him to an inn, and takes care of him. The next day, he gives money to the innkeeper and promises to pay any additional expenses. Jesus asks, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The answer, of course, was the one who had mercy. The profound lesson embedded in this parable and illustrated in our story is that true love isn't confined by labels, by societal expectations, or by shared background. It transcends all boundaries. It's not a feeling we reserve for those we deem worthy or convenient. It is an active compassion, a readiness to step into another's suffering, to lend a hand, to offer comfort, to provide for their needs, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs us something, and especially when the person in need might be someone we have been taught to overlook or even to dislike. The loving neighbor is not defined by proximity or shared identity, but by a heart that sees need and responds with unconditional action. It's about recognizing the inherent dignity and worth in every human being and extending kindness not because they've earned it, but because they are in need. It's about healing wounds that are both seen and unseen. As you go about your day, perhaps take a moment to reflect. Who is your neighbor? Is it only those you know, those who look like you, or those you agree with? Or is it anyone whose path crosses you, anyone in a moment of distress, anyone who needs a helping hand, a compassionate word, or simply to be seen? Let us strive to embody that compassionate stranger, to let our love show itself not just in thought, but in concrete, healing action. Thank you for listening. We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Who has been a loving neighbor to you? Or how have you been called to be a loving neighbor to someone else? Your stories enrich us all.